the victory. Faith is the victory. Oh, glorious victory that overcomes the world.
We'll be looking at a verse in chapter 4, as I mentioned. This is going to be without flair or flamboyance. We're just going to do our best to get what we need to get done today, done with this. Now this is in the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse number 18. I'm reading from the Christian Standard Bible. It says this: "So we do not focus on what is seen, but on what is unseen." We do not focus on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Now we're concentrating on just this one phrase in the midst of that verse. Of course, the verse numbers don't have anything to do with, logically, with what's being communicated in the Scriptures. They came long after the Scriptures themselves did. But nonetheless, we're going to look at just this one phrase. We're not trying to strip it out of context or anything else like that, but just to zero in on the thing that it refers to, its referent. We are looking at this, and hopefully what we will see this morning is that it's talking about something that is chosen to be done as far as what we see. We are choosing to see something rather than another thing. We are choosing to see one thing as opposed to another thing. This is basically the force of this phrase. This message this morning that I'm introducing anyhow, I call the vision of faith, because I believe that is a good way of looking at this phrase and trying to catch the gist of it. Now, faith is a lot of things. When you hear a preacher talk about faith, there's a lot of things that come to mind. For instance, you can think of faith being trust in God. That's absolutely true, and I think that's maybe even maybe more fundamental than almost anything. Is it faith if you're not actually relying on God and trust? No, it's not. People talk about God, but if they don't trust God, then I would say that they don't have faith. So faith can be thought of in those kinds of terms. We can think of faith in terms of something like the assurance of the heart. It's a little more nebulous, a little more subjective, but it's described more or less in that kind of a way. At least it's alluded to in Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 1. So we can talk about faith being that. Faith is that thing that makes you just have a sense of assurance of the thing that is not seen, of the thing that is spiritual. We can think of faith in a number of ways beside that. One of the ways that comes just from linguistic study, when you look at the words that are involved in faith, is something that's steady and reliable, something that is ground you can stand on, something that is like a flat-bottomed boat, something you're riding along and it doesn't tip over. It's got some steadiness to it. So all of those kinds of concepts, I think, are definitely biblical, and they very much help us understand this subject matter of faith. Today, I think what we pick up from this phrase that we are looking at this morning is that faith really is a choice to see things a certain way. Right? This is really what it's getting to in our passage this morning, is that faith involves a choice to see things a certain way. Now you may say that, Pastor, I don't see the word faith in our text, in this little phrase that I read to you, to which I will reply that perhaps the word itself is not there, but it is certainly the description of faith that we have other places in the Bible, like Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 1, that is there. So even though the word is not in our text, it's talking about the very nature of the thing that we're talking about. It's talking about the nature of faith. Faith being something that involves a choice to see things in a certain way. Now, in talking about seeing in this kind of way, our text actually attaches a couple of thoughts, I think, which really helps bring about this idea of choice. One of these words, as it starts off with, the first time it says, and it really comes out nice and clearly in the Christian Standard Bible that I read to you, is that it's talking about focus. Another way would be, another word that would help us maybe here thinking about this is the word aim. The Greek word skapeo is there, and it really means to aim or to focus, to have a certain intensity in what you are trying to encompass with your capacity to see. So, it's talking about something that is not accidental, not something that is happening apart from or other than your will. When you focus, right, it's an act of the will. When you're aiming, it's an act of the will. I mean, you don't aim by accident. If you do, it's an accident. Right? I mean, aiming, focusing, that requires determination. It requires decision. It requires a person being conscious of what's going on and making a decision to go that way, to point that direction. It's packed into the cake, or it's baked into the cake, I should say. It could be packed into the cake, but then the cake probably wouldn't taste so good. So, but it's baked into the cake. It's just part of what's there underlying the thought itself. Is when you think about this word that's talking about focus, it requires the concept of a choice being made. There's will involved. There's consciousness involved. It's not by accident. It's not just something that comes visiting upon a person. When you focus, you make a choice. And so we have this, and then it follows up within our text when it says that it's about not those things that are seen, but those things that are unseen. There it uses the Greek word blepo, and that's talking as well about something that is about perception. So when you talk about blepo, you're not talking about seeing in the sense that you would if you were just looking around, and various sites will various images will be reflected on on your retina and all that kind of thing. And it's really complicated biochemistry and everything else that goes into how your eyes work. But we're not talking about that kind of thing. But we're talking about not only seeing a thing, but understanding something more about it than maybe what appears. We're talking about having some perception, having some ability to understand and to more or less dissect the thing that you're seeing. And so between this concept which carries choice in it and this word that's talking about something that's more related maybe to perception than accidental seeing, what you really get in this combination of usage in this phrase is that it's talking about a vision that is not only perception, but it is a choice to see it that way. It's a choice has got to be rendered, if you will, in order to see a thing a certain way. Now, why do I say a certain way? Well, because it makes the distinction between seen and the unseen. You would say, well, that doesn't really make logical sense. How can something be seen if it's unseen? Hebrews chapter 11, verse number 1 uses that same kind of dichotomy, doesn't it? Seen versus unseen. How can you see what's not seen? How can you see a thing that doesn't have the same kind of capability of reflecting electromagnetic radiation? How do you possibly see that which is unseeable? Well, this is just the point, isn't it? It requires perception. It requires something above the natural. It requires something other than the normal. It requires something that isn't casual. It requires something, I would say something God-given in a very clear way, but also something that involves a choice. See, you don't aim, you don't perceive that which is unseeable without making a choice to see it. You don't see it without making a choice to perceive it. It doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen without thought. It happens with a vision that's directed. And that's the whole point of our message this morning, is that faith, when we talk about this subject of faith, we are not talking about something that is outside of the purview of the choices that you make as a conscious being. We're not talking about something that springs up unbidden from some secret well inside of your heart. We're not talking about something that, drops on you from the heavens. All of a sudden I have faith. All of a sudden there's something just happening in me. That's really not a good way to see things. I know that sometimes we like to spiritualize things, especially in our camp, to understand things happening that way. But here's the thing, if you want to have the kind of strength and the kind of persistence and the kind of effectiveness in faith that we see not only reflected in places like Hebrews chapter 11, but I think alluded to in our passage this morning, I think you have to understand that faith is going to take something from you, making up your mind, making a choice, making a determination to see things according to the principle of faith. You have to do that. There are so many Christians, I run into them all the time, you probably do too, and for them there's always such a big gap between what they understand as their faith, and when they say that, usually they're talking about a corpus of dogma, right? There's a lot of people who think that's what faith is that I follow these tenets, or I understand these tenets are true. Is it important to have dogma? Is it important to have doctrine and tenets? Well, sure it is. The Bible's filled with that. But if that's all your concept of faith is accepting or acknowledging those things, there's just going to be gaps between what you experience and what seems to be described in the Bible as a possibility for you to experience. Are you hearing? Am I making any sense to you? Yeah. Right? There's going to be a gap there. Because, if faith is something that is only about that thing which is distant from you, that isn't something that is engaging a conscious choice in you, you're not going to see that. Now, what am I talking about? Because that sounds a little bit iffy and a little bit maybe, that kind of a thing. What am I talking about here? Well, let's just think about all of the things that Jesus said that really require this kind of action of faith, right? Maybe we can go through this exercise and this will pop into sense despite the words that I'm using. We're applying this, in other words. So, for instance, we think of something that Jesus said like this. He said, "Lo, I'm with you always to the end of the age." Did Jesus say that? It's always the most important thing, right? Yes, he did. He absolutely said that to his disciples, right? "Lo, I am with you to the end of the age." Now, what does faith do with that? Well, think about it this way. Faith makes a choice to see it that way, which means that faith makes a choice to see that Jesus is with me. Some people go around, they're searching for the presence of the Lord. Where is God in my life? And I think, well, duh. According to the Scriptures, if you are a disciple of Christ, He's with you. Amen. He's not far away. He's not hidden. He's not someplace other. He's with you. You just have to start seeing it that way. Right? You have got to start seeing it that way, and seeing it that way, you have to take it to heart and say, this is so. I choose to see it this way. That's what faith does. Right? Does that make sense? Yeah. Right? We'll go to example number 2 then. Jesus said, "Ask and I will answer." Did he not say that? He did in the Gospel of John. He most certainly did. "Ask and I will respond." I know so many Christians that have so much problems with prayer. They don't know how to pray, they think. If you know how to talk, you know how to pray. And you don't even have to talk. If you know how to think in language, you know how to pray. Right? It's not hard to pray. Prayer is just talking. It's conversing. That's really all it is. And if you can do that, you can pray. So it's not a matter of the skill of praying that's eluding you. Maybe what it is that you don't have the faith to actually understand or to perceive what it does or how it works according to the promise of Jesus. If Jesus said that He will hear our prayers, that He will respond to our prayers, what does that mean? Did Jesus ever lie? Is Jesus without power? Does Jesus ever not know what's going on? I mean, we could keep on going on, right, in this description of Jesus, what he's like and what he brings to the table. And, you know, when you do that, you come to the conclusion that Jesus is awesome, and he is aware of everything, and there's nothing that gets past him. Jesus certainly knows what I'm praying. And if Jesus knows what you're praying, what did Jesus himself say about what he's going to do? He said he'll hear you and he'll respond. And so, how does faith work in response to that? Faith sees it that way. You know, I tell people, I pray, I expect Jesus to answer every single prayer.
Amen.
Now, you can call me foolish, I'll call me faithful. I expect Jesus to answer my prayer. I mean, people say that God answers prayer in 3 kinds of ways. Yes, no, and wait. I say, I don't find that biblical. I find that God gives one answer to prayer. Yes. It's just the application of it sometimes doesn't make sense to us. Right? It's not yes, no, and wait. It's always yes. Yea and amen. That's what God's promises are. And we just have to start seeing them that way. This is what faith is. If you want to have the faith that gets prayers answered, you have to see it this way. You just have to see it this way. Jesus said it. I believe it. It's true. I choose to see it this way. And I tell you what, you start acting on that, you'll find a big difference in your prayer life. And then example number 3, and we'll get you out of here. Jesus said, all things are possible.
Amen.
So where are the naysayers out there? Now I know any of us are naysayers at times. Have you ever thought it can't be done, nothing can be done about it, oh no, woe is me, all the rest that goes with all of that? I mean, we've all been there, probably more than once this past week. Right? I mean, it's so human of us. But here's what faith is. Faith is not about being stuck with what's human in you. Faith is about a choice that you make because of Jesus. It's a choice that you make to believe what he said, to see it as true, to see it that way. And when you make that choice to see it that way, boy, things open up to you. Things open up to you. Things that you thought were never possible become possible. Jesus said, all things are possible to him who has faith. Do you have faith? What is faith? Some kind of esoteric quality that finds a way of weaving itself into your being in a mystical way, unknown, unseen to your eye or awareness? I would say, who knows what God is doing to weave faith into your heart? And it's really not our area to worry about. We have to worry about the things that God puts out in the wide open, that God says in his word, right? The hidden things belong to God, but the things that are not hidden, they belong to us. That's what the book of Proverbs says. And what belongs to us is just this: faith is the choice that you make to see things a certain way. You make the choice to see them that way. And when you make the choice to see them that way, and you act as if they're true, you stand on those things, you will be surprised at what faith can do in your life. I want you to walk out of this place with a concept of faith that you can develop, that you can walk on, that you can practice, and that you can start seeing the blessing of God come through for you. Because I guarantee you this, there's not one of you for whom God does not want to be real to. There is not one of you for whom God does not want to show up in your life and bring his blessing. There's not one of you. There's not one of you that God does not want to respond to your expression of faith. Not one of you. This is just the heart of God. This is just the way that he is, and this is just the way that he's made us to be as his children. And I trust that all of you will endeavor to walk in faith.